Good evening, everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of The Career Climb. If you are not familiar with the show, The Career Climb is where we spark conversations with executives and industry leaders, and they share their perspective on leadership and workplace culture through real life cases, not theory. No hypotheticals around here. And I honestly can't wait for you to meet tonight's guest, Kimberly Brown, and she's going to dig into this week's case study with me. But if we have yet to meet, this is the first time you're seeing my face in real life. I'm your host, Julia Rock, founder and CEO at Rock Career Development. We are a Houston-based consulting firm that helps organizations reduce turnover and increase long-term growth through leadership transformation solutions. So simply put, through leadership training, coaching, and consulting, we make your leaders better so that your people stay and you make more money. It's just that simple. And I am excited for you to be here with us tonight. So if you want to catch up on this episode, if you have to leave midway through and you want to catch up on this episode or past episodes of The Career Climb, you can visit me or connect with me here on LinkedIn or visit our YouTube playlist at rockcareer.com/archive or CC archive, and you can view our entire playlist there. And tonight we're going to keep the conversation very interactive. We want you to drop your thoughts in the chat, drop questions for me, for Kimberly, for the conversation, especially if we're going through the case study. Challenge us if we want. We want to hear from you. But I have talked a lot already, and it's time for you to meet our special guest, Kimberly Brown, as we dig into tonight's topic around building your leadership brand and legacy and how you can truly be a leader on your own terms, not just for now, for the future. So let's go ahead and get into it. Kimberly, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Julia. I'm very excited about our conversation today.
Me too. I'm just going to put it out there that I have been a Kimberly Brown fangirl for years. So this is such an opportunity. I'm so excited to have you, especially for this conversation. But I know that I'm a fan, but I would love for you to take a minute here to introduce yourself to the viewers.
Definitely. So my name is Kimberly Brown. I'm the founder of Brown Leadership, an international leadership development company. Also the host of the Your Next Move podcast. But I always say my stick is to help people do three things: navigate the world of work, make more money, and position themselves as industry leaders. My company does a combination of one-to-one, group, consulting, building out leadership curriculums. All of my work personally and now professionally as a full-time entrepreneur has always been centered around helping people navigate the workplace. So again, super excited to be here today. And I shared earlier, I'm like, I'm not a live stream girly, but we're doing it today. So
we're doing it.
Yes.
We are building the live stream muscle this evening. And so I want to get your perspective as we start to dig into this topic. Why do you think we even need to have this conversation about kind of a leadership brand and legacy, right? When we think about leaders, it's like, hey, I've got to do the job. I've got to manage people. I've got to set the tone for the here and now. But why do you think we need to have this conversation for brand and then also the legacy?
So I think people wait too long to even think about legacy. We put legacy building on this mountaintop where, okay, when I'm a chief so-and-so, when I'm a head of so-and-so, when I'm a director of, VP of, whatever title you have in your mind, I think most people have an idea of legacy starts here. But I'm a big believer that you are a leader no matter what role you're in, no matter what level it is. Your goal is to lead and drive impact no matter where you are: executive assistant, coordinator, all the way through chief, CEO, whatever title you climb in your career. And I think that I love to ask my clients all the time, like, what do you want your peers, the company, your manager to say when you leave here? What is the legacy you are leaving within your work? What is the impact? What is the value? And I think we need to have that conversation a lot sooner and stop waiting to be whatever the pinnacle is we have in our minds. So that's why I think it's so important that we chat about this today. So people, regardless of where they are, regardless of their tenure, their hierarchy in the organization, they're thinking about the impact, the value, and the legacy they're leaving there. Because every job you have, there is some legacy you could or could not be leaving.
Man, and that goes really well into my next question, because I feel like unless you're managing people, some folks feel like I can't lead, I don't have any influence. And so that's why I wanted to talk about, like, what are some of the misconceptions when it comes to that leadership brand? Because there may be someone who says, hey, I'm an entry level person, I just got
Mhm.
hired, I've only been here a year or two. Why should I even care about my brand? I'm just trying to figure out where the bathroom is on this floor, right? So any thoughts on that?
So first and foremost, I think similar to my communities and the work that I do, I'm pretty sure everyone who is involved with Rock career development feels the same. And we'll see if you nod when I say this, but people do not consume career content for fun. They don't. They don't. If you are consuming career content, if you are listening to this live stream, whether it's live or replay, you are probably a high achiever. You are probably someone who does not have any problem doing the work, like actually getting your job done. You're probably not someone who's ever been on a PIP or performance improvement plan because you're listening again to career content for fun in your spare time. And I think that, again, we put figuring the job out as like what we should do, and we don't think about what happens after figuring the job out. And that's where a lot of professionals end up feeling stuck. And most people, after they've been in a job for a few years, not at the super senior levels, but I'd say middle management and below, they'll come and be like, oh my gosh, I feel so stuck in my career, or I'm bored, or I feel like I'm just working to work, I don't know what I want to do next. That's because you've never thought about legacy. You've never thought about leadership. You've put all of your effort into, let me master the job at hand. And let me not say that that's something small, right? Because doing the work is the baseline. If you are on a PIP, if you are not performing well, we don't need to talk about legacy yet. We
Mhm.
need to talk about getting your job performance to minimum meets expectations, if not exceeds expectations. But again, I doubt that that's you on this call. I highly doubt that's you. The legacy is the part that most professionals are missing, especially when we're talking about women and people of color. It's we really aren't thinking about what is that next level for ourselves. I teach professionals that it is your job to lead in your body of work. I do
Mm.
not care if you are a data analyst, if you are coding, if you are doing tasks that you feel like don't impact someone, they do. And it is your job to lead in that arena and slowly but surely see how you can tweak, how can you improve, how can you make this better? And that's a part of your legacy.
I love that because, to your point, some of us are not thinking about this until later on, right? And we're like, we've got to do the job, we've got to do the job well. That's kind of where it stops. But in order for you to truly, one, grow in your career and, like you said, create impact, you've got to be thinking ahead as to what difference am I able to make? How who else can I bring along on this journey?
Yes.
Who else can I help? What can I transform? It's not just about executing well. You should execute well. So for those who are listening, we are not advocating for you to not do your job well. That is the base expectation. But
Yes.
we want to take the step above that to say, okay, now that we are performing well in the role, what do we do next, or what do we think about next? So I love that. And so let me ask you this last question before we get into the case study. Is there an experience, even on your personal journey when it comes to leadership, legacy, and branding that you'd like to share with the viewers, like one that maybe stands out to you?
So I guess I can tell the story of like the first time I ever saw a leader that inspired me. I was honestly in school. I was an undergrad.
Hmm.
And I believe she was the vice president of student affairs or the provost of student affairs at the university. And we were in a meeting, and something I noticed about her that was so distinct, how she moved about the room and shared her vision made you lean in. It didn't matter if it was a big scale, small scale, but it made you lean. And even what's more than that is that how she gracefully turned people down. And a lot of people are like, why is that important to you? Because I think as a leader, and as we think about executive presence, as we talk about legacy, how you make people feel, how you engage with others, how you inspire others. Many of the leaders that we know today, we are inspired by how they do things, about how they share their vision. Most companies have, the 2025 plan for transformation or 2030, we're going to be here. That is buying into someone's legacy.
Mm.
And what the first time I saw it was an undergrad when the university was going through some changes. And I saw this woman at the forefront of change, speaking with different leaders around the campus, speaking with students. And I always noticed how she made people feel seen, heard, and you trusted in what she said, even when she turned you down. I used to joke and say that you wouldn't know she turned you down because it felt good. You still felt seen, heard, and respected. And that was one of the first times I was like, I'm excited to be a leader who has this art and this skill and can show the same level of respect when I love something versus when I hate something. And the legacy she left at the university still lives on today. And I think that's an important thing. I always tell my clients, like, when is the moment that you saw leadership? When is the first time you got excited about someone's legacy? And how can we make that earlier in your own career and start to be able to articulate and share those thoughts?
I love that. And now you've got me thinking about, just early in my career where there were people who I saw them and I just said, wow, like that's the kind of leader I want to be, or I'm inspired by them and kind of the vision that they have and or even how they respond to people. Now I'm thinking about when I worked in financial services, I had an old boss by the name of Scott. And what I loved about Scott was that he was very kind of even keel. It wasn't a big deal if something got messed up. He was one of those solutions oriented leaders, not micromanaging, give you the space to fail, and then we fix it if we have a problem. And that stood out to me at the time because in my mind, it's like, so you don't have to micromanage people
Mhm.
to lead. You don't have to be in your employees' faces every day in order for them to feel the impact from you. You
No,
just have
yeah.
to show up in a certain way to give them the space to grow, to fly, to fall, and be there to
Mhm.
support them. So now, thank you for took me back down memory lane.
Yes.
Um, so curveball question that we hadn't talked about, because just want to build on what you said here. When you think about empathy, because empathy sounds like it was really resounding in that
Yes.
lady's kind of her interaction with people. How do you think that empathy plays into a leadership brand and legacy? Because I feel like that's the skill that a lot of leaders are lacking kind of universally,
Mhm.
and that could truly transform the workplace. So just wanted to hear your thoughts on that.
It can, and people don't like that word the same way when they hear, "Oh my gosh, I'm gentle parenting my children." They're like, "Oh, they're not disciplining their kids. They're just letting them run rampant." It's like, that's not what gentle parenting means. But they
Right.
take it that way. When people hear empathy in the workplace, they're like, "I'm not gonna be soft. I'm not gonna sugarcoat myself every single time I gotta give someone feedback." That's not what empathy is about. Empathy is about understanding someone's perspective, making sure that they feel seen, they feel heard, and they feel respected in the workplace. That's all empathy is. And I think we kind of take it too far, the same way we take it with gentle parenting and other things like that. It's, and it really is the key, like you said, to being a great leader. Because when your team feels heard and seen, even when you're not agreeing with them, you develop influence, you have more loyalty, you have higher team retention, you have people who are honest and transparent. One of the things I share is that I believe a mark of a good leader is when your team is able to talk openly and honestly about their career goals. When you're able to tell when someone's looking for another job and they're able to openly tell you that because they trust you, and you're not out here shocked when you get a 2 weeks notice. I believe, and I could be, some people may agree, some people may not agree, but you know what? I have the mic, so I'm going to say it how I say it. I believe that it really shows the impact of your leadership and the trust of your team if someone can openly tell you without shocking you that you know
Mhm,
what they're looking or they're ready for their next move, and they trust you as a leader to help them move throughout the organization or externally.
mhm.
The first chapter of my book is actually the last chapter that I wrote. It is called Serving as a People Leader is Not a Rite of Passage, it's a privilege. Because when we're
Mm.
talking about traditional leadership, I think a lot of people just think about like task execution. They think about how can I get this done, knock this out, but they're not thinking about empathy. They're not thinking about the role that a manager has in an organization is so pivotal because you are literally in control of someone else's career. And
Mhm.
we could do all the other strategies. Like I teach my clients how to work around your manager because the reality is a lot of us don't have good ones or haven't had good ones. So we need to do that. But imagine the retention that would happen at organizations if managers were taught to lead with empathy, if they built good relationships with their team, if they were taught how to lead to get tasks done, but also to develop people's careers. And a lot of that centers in empathy.
I love that. I think a lot of leaders don't understand. You get a lot more done when you have better relationships with your team versus skill.
Yes.
So if you're able to build the right relationships with your team because they actually know how to do the thing. They know how to do the thing. Your job is to lead them as they're doing the thing. So you should be less focused on the task at hand
Mhm.
and building that relationship, building those that trust, right? Like you
Yeah.
said, in order for your team to bring things forward, they need to trust you. If you build that trust, your
Mhm.
team is willing to go all the way to the ocean for you and get
Yeah.
things done on your behalf. So I truly love that. So our for the listeners, we're about and the viewers, we're about to get into the case study. So if you do have questions for Kimberly, go ahead and drop those in the chat. And so let's talk about the case study. If you have a pen and paper, you can write down a little bit about this case tonight. So we're talking about the trusted operator or visionary leader. That's our case study
Mhm.
for tonight. So we're going to talk about Marcus. Marcus has been a senior VP of operations. He's been at a global manufacturing company for over 15 years. So he's the fix it guy. Leadership calls him when something is broken and off track. He's the guy that steps in and gets things done. He's super detail oriented. He always gets results, all the things. He's trusted by his team, respected by executives, all of that.
Mhm.
But at this stage, poor Marcus is really struggling, and reflecting on his legacy. And he was thinking about what he wanted to be remembered for. And he didn't want to just be the problem solver. He wants to be seen as a transformational leader. But here's Marcus's problem. Over that 15 years, he's been the fix it guy, the
Mhm.
execution guy, not the innovation or strategy person. And so he's been passed over for C suite roles twice. And he's gotten feedback that he's too in the weeds and not
Mhm.
seen as a visionary. And he's feeling stuck. He's feeling recognized. People see him, but he's not feeling elevated. So the question I have or the major question I have for you, Kimberly, as we dig into this is, how does Marcus proceed from here? Does he continue to play the fix it role? Or does he take intentional steps to reshape how he's being seen? And so when we think about, as we've been talking about the leadership legacy and the brand, it's like, what do you want to leave behind? And it seems like Marcus is struggling with that. So any initial thoughts about Marcus and how he can move forward from here?
Oh, I've got a
All
ton to
right,
help
all
Marcus
right.
out.
Help us
So the
understand what's going on with Marcus.
So the first thing I share, and if Marcus were to come to me as a client, the first thing is I tell him that we need to break out of his box. I
Mm,
give an analogy with my clients similar to imagine when you've moved into a home or an apartment that's bigger than what you have. When you moved from a one bedroom to a two bedroom, generally when you walk into that two bedroom, you're like, oh my God, I got so much space in here. It is amazing because your first apartment, that one bedroom, every closet was packed. You got things in the hallway. You got the storage under the couch, under the bed. You got the extra thing above the toilet in the bathroom. Like it is overrun. You have no space.
mhm,
And in every job that we have, and we've been building a career and we're trying to switch from being in a more of like a director, more of an execution role to more of the visionary, the chief, etc. You have been operating in this area that is capacity. It is at capacity. You need to move into that new apartment. You need to move into the new house. You need to allow yourself to break out of this box to be in a place where you have room to think and to grow, to vision. So, one of the first assignments I give someone who comes to me like this is I call it deep thinking time.
mm,
I need you to take some time in whatever place or thing, wherever you need to be to get your juices flowing. For me, if I just take a walk and I literally Google like coffee table jazz on Spotify or on YouTube because the lyrics will get me like I'll be thinking about the lyrics and singing along, so I can't do that. I love like an R&B coffee table jazz thing
okay.
too. I'll put that in there and just walk sometimes. I could be in my apartment on my walking pad. I could be outside. For some people, it could be in the shower. For some of my clients, it's at the gym. It's wherever you feel like ideas come to you. Think about, so for Marcus, it's like how does he solve problems? And when does that idea come to him that helps him be the fixer? I want him to go do that thing, but I want him to really think about what would he do if he could not fail? Who would he be? What does it look like? What does it feel like? what his ideal day looks like from the moment he opens his eyes to the second he crawls back in bed and pulls up the sheets. I work with my clients to kind of break out this vision, essentially that vision of moving to that 2 bedroom when you had the 1 bedroom, and not thinking about everything else that happened to him. Because I do believe that when you have had failed job search processes, it is a punch in your gut. It knocks your breath away. You hate the world, you hate your company, you hate your friends, you hate your family. You are honestly bitter. Like, I've been there. I've been declined for jobs myself multiple
Same.
times after those long searches, where it's like you've had 18 interviews. If y'all don't want me, just tell me. And you feel like your time is wasted. So you need to take some breath and to breathe, kind of let go of that energy and think about what would you do if you could not fail? Because I think that one of the biggest things that's missing when you're moving from being an operator, when you're moving from being a fixer to moving to more of a C-suite role, is being able to get people to buy into your vision. And I think people forget about that in the interview process, because in the interview process, especially if Marcus is interviewing in a job and or company that he's currently at, all they see is him in this 1 bedroom. All they see him is as a fixer. And I bet you Marcus is speaking like a fixer too. About, oh, I'm gonna solve this, I'm gonna do that, I'm gonna do that, I'm gonna do that. But when you talk about C-suite leaders or heads of whatever it is at the company, they're visionaries. They talk about transformation and the things that they're leading and the transformation the entire organization is going to happen, not necessarily the minute problems. So I would need to work with him on how do we tell this story of his vision so that they can start to see him outside of just there's a fire right now and we need to put it out, to this is where the company can go under his leadership. And he has to start seeing that within himself first.
I love that. And that kind of ties back to what we were saying at the beginning around, thinking early, because there's maybe someone who's listening now who's like, hey, I'm not at Marcus's level, but you may be a few years before him in your career. And this would be the time to think about, what do you want to be known for before you get pigeonholed into the
Yes.
fixer or whatever the role might be. So getting that mindset early around, how do I want to be seen? What do I want to be known for? What do I want my brand to be? So that when you decide to move on, to move into that 2 bedroom, that you have the opportunity to move into it and people are not pigeonholing you into a certain area. But I love the idea of taking the deep thinking time, because now you have that time to yourself to just reflect on what's important to me. Who do I want to be? What does my ideal day look like? And I think so many of us, we don't even think about that. We just
No,
go
for
from
sure.
day to day. It's, so I really love that perspective. So we talked a little bit about, Marcus taking that time to really reflect, but what practical steps can he now take to shift perception inside the organization? So he would have done his own kind of personal work and
Mhm.
reflecting, but now he's got to go and try to push the envelope within his company. And they've seen him the same way over the past 15
Mhm.
years.
So number one, I think it's more, I want him to do a little pre-work too. Because I
Okay.
think that especially if you have been a fixer and the organization that now they need you. Like, they legitimately need you to keep doing what you're doing because nobody else knows it. Because you're just so good at it, right?
Yeah.
Everybody comes to you to do it. Nobody else can do it how you do it, Marcus. Like, and people, they hold on to that. I need you to start working on succession planning. If you're
Oh.
a leader, and especially if you're working on this next thing, I also need you to start thinking about who are you training below you, because that's also a question that's going to come up that a lot of people don't have an answer to. And if
Mhm.
you already have your second person, and they can be in the company or they could be external. You could be, we know that happens all the time where someone or has that friend or that contact, that mentee that you already know. The first thing I would do is bring this person under
Yep.
to start doing it. I want you to start thinking about that too, because that helps mitigate some of the risk for the organization so that you don't get yourself in a place once we do all this branding work where you're doing 2 roles at one time and you're burning out. And then when you start doing 2 roles, sometimes they have you do those 2 roles for a lot longer than they should, because again, they don't want you to do anything else. They really just need this, but they're trying to keep you. So they're going to try and force you to stay there. So number one, succession planning. Number two, I want you to start looking at your existing body of work and say, where could I move into being more of a visionary and less of a fixer? Part of this is delegating. Part of this is telling your story. Part of this is going on a listening tour and really figuring out what are the opportunities in the organization, what are the ways that you can have a larger impact, and how can you begin to allow people to see you as not just a fixer. Fixers generally stay behind the scenes.
Mm-hmm.
They don't speak up and share their vision. They don't share their ideas. They're literally the one called in to put out the fire because they know you have the hose, you know you'll knock it out, and it's good. We need you to be the person. Like I watch a lot of medical dramas and fire dramas, right? So if you watch any of the fire shows, and I don't know the names, y'all, so bear with me. But if you watch like 911 or Station 19, when you become the chief of the station house, you aren't running into the fire. You are outside directing all the firefighters to go inside. You only go in at that last moment. If one of your firefighters is down or something crashed, you need to fix something, then that chief runs in. But they are outside on the mic talking to folks to direct them on how to go with the fire. They're giving the strategy of how to move from each room. When a fire is burning here, they got to go around here to save this person. I need you to start acting like that person here, acting like the mover, and allowing your people, allowing your team. And if you don't have team, then we can talk about that too. But it's trying to move yourself a little bit more away from the day-to-day execution and more into the vision, into the overall strategy. And people need to see and feel that you have that ability to do strategy, have the ability to vision and see the future, and not just put out the fire in that one room.
You know, what I really love about that perspective is that you're thinking about shifting how others see him just through specific actions, right? Versus you going in with a bullhorn saying, "No, I'm not the tactical person. I
That
can
doesn't
do
work.
strategy." You know what I mean? It's really about what steps am I able to demonstrate to say, "Hey, I now have a person, I now have a right hand who can come in behind me
Mhm.
and support me." You know, I've taken some steps back and I have empowered the folks within my organization to do more without me being involved. And so in such a way, the folks around him can see, okay, well, Marcus can actually be the strategy person or be the visionary person and allow the team to really do the execution. So I love that perspective where you're not trying to beat people over the head with the idea that, hey, you can do this thing. You're just showing them. You know, what's the common
100%.
saying? You know, showing them better than you can tell them, right? So
Yes.
that's really what it sounds like your advice for Marcus would be. For the folks who are listening, I hope that you are taking note of all these gems. And so we talked a little bit about Marcus at that level, but I'm thinking about someone who's earlier in their career who may be listening. You know, they may say, "Hey, I don't have the team of people. I don't have an army of 50 people who I can now delegate things to." They're maybe earlier in their career. What would your thought be if they're like, "Hey, I want to make sure I'm starting to establish this brand"? Like, what are some action steps someone earlier in their career might be able to take?
The biggest thing I tell people earlier in their career is one, like master the role. We need to get to a place of role mastery where you're not asking questions, you are operating autonomously. And once you get there, then it's how can you innovate? How can you make it better? And I think a lot of folks, once they master, they're like, oh, I need a new job. And that's what they want. They want to go to the next thing. But I want you to see, can you stick your teeth in just a little bit deeper and make it better? And again, that kind of leads to what is the legacy that you're building at that organization? How can we make it better? How can we innovate? How can we transform where you are? And also, how can we standardize? Because another thing, similar to with Marcus, where we're telling him to start going to look at succession planning and all of that, I want you to start building standard operating procedures. Build processes that can be repeatable so that you're able to train someone to backfill your role. I think a lot of times when folks are positioning themselves for a promotion, it's very eye focused. And I get it, right? Like you want the money, you want the job, you're going to do the job and you're going to get the money. I totally understand that. However, from an organizational perspective, what is happening to the workload that you're currently doing?
Mm.
How are we helping the organization with that? Some people may be like, Kimberly, well, that's not my job. I did that job. But leaders don't think like that. Leaders are thinking about the betterment of the organization. So I challenge you to start building those SOPs, innovating on what you're doing so you can actually position yourself for something larger. Because if you're innovating, doing something different, transforming an area, that's a great way to vie for headcount, to talk about, okay, now that I'm doing this, I need to spend more time here and I can backfill to do what I was doing before. And you can position yourself as a leader and you're being more solution oriented versus just kind of coming up with like, the problem is I need to be in this role, but you're building the full scale solution of you moving up and building things behind you.
Man, I wish I could just play that on repeat because, the idea of as soon as you master a role, people just are ready to job
Mhm.
hop to something else. It's like, okay, I've gotten all I can out of this role. Let me move on to the next thing instead
Mhm.
of thinking about, okay, well, now I've gotten all I can. What can I contribute for those coming behind me, those around me, for the future of the organization? That's the distinction that you're making there for leaders is that we're thinking about what's next, who's next, and how can I support them through my efforts. So I love the idea of the
Mhm.
innovation, standardizing
Yeah.
processes. We've all been in those jobs where you come in and it's a mess, right? There's no process, there's no handover,
Mhm.
there's no materials. You're just in there, drinking from the fire hose is the way they call it. So,
Oh yeah.
you
One of
know,
the one of the things I tell my clients, especially like from a one-on-one perspective, I tell them literally, I want you to get everything you can out of where you are. And I
Mhm.
know some folks don't want to hear that, but I'm very much grow where you are planted, suck the job and the company dry. Because it is so much easier to dig in deeper where you are when you have the relationships, you have the personal brand. You're again, like you've already mastered your job, you're doing great work, you're not on a pip, you have relationships. It's a lot easier to do all that at your current company than it is to create a new brand at another company. You have to build all of that stakeholder relationship, all of that trust. You have to rebuild all of that. And the other thing I teach my clients, and I know if there's any corporations listening, you may not like this, but again, I'm going to say it anyways, that I also want to position you in case your company is not ready to promote you, in
Mhm.
case you're that person who you had the conversation, you had it at mid-year, you had it at end of year. We're a year and a half since you've had this conversation, and they've kind of given you the little things to pacify you to hope that you'll stay, but you haven't really gotten the salary bump. You haven't done the thing, and they keep on saying they're going to do it, but haven't done it, and they're not being honest with you. By using that time to experiment, to try new things, to innovate, that only improves your storytelling and your experiences to position you for the next job. So that you're not going into those interviews saying, well, if given the opportunity, I would be able to, or
Right.
based on my experience doing this, I should be able to do this. You're able to say, well, at my current company, I was able to transform this, innovate here, add value here, add impact here. Because I think a lot of folks, again, they get so angry because they want to move up, they want to move up, and they try and check out. I'm not a fan of quiet quitting. That's one of my soapboxes that I get real upset about. I'm like, don't quiet quit. Like, I can't. I'm like, use that time appropriately to position you for whatever the next thing is.
Man, I love that idea because I think about job interviews where people are giving the hypotheticals, right? Like,
Yes.
if I was given this opportunity, here's
Mhm.
how I would think, or here's how I would approach it, and so forth. But if you take that time at your current role to really dig your heels in and see how you can add more value, there's so many things you could add to that brag sheet that you should be keeping.
Because you're going to be there anyways. Use the
Right.
time.
Exactly. You're gonna go keep going and checking it every day. Why not you put it to put it to use?
Yes.
And one thing if I'll add here is, and this is a strategy that has worked for me, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on it, Kimberly. Take time to be willing to do some of the things that others are not willing to do. One of the biggest things that has boosted me when I had my corporate career was being willing to take on the things that seemed too hard, or somebody didn't
Yeah.
really want to do it, or they had already tried. I was willing to dig into that because that helped me to build a brand of, okay,
Mhm.
we can give Julia the big responsibilities, the things that people can't get done, and she's going to get it done. And that helped me with getting greater leadership positions. But I'd love to hear your thoughts on taking on some of that unconventional, well, let's call it unsavory work that people don't want to do.
Oh, I love it. I say that word too. That word too. I love saying calling things unsavory. I love that. I feel like it's so classy. I love it. Um, I think when we're talking about that unsavory work, what I want people to do is evaluate how that work is going to contribute to your vision. So in the same way with markets, when I said I want you to have that deep thinking time, I think everybody needs deep thinking time to understand what is your ultimate career goal. independent of your company, independent of your manager. Like you by yourself, what is your vision? What do you want to do? And really break down what does it take to get here? So, for instance, when I worked in higher ed, I spent about 10 years in higher ed. And for years, all I wanted to do was to be a director of career services. That is it. So I went and I did my internet stalking to figure out, okay, what are the top schools? What do the directors of career services look like? What are their titles? What are their careers comprised of? And really making sure I understood these are the components. These are the experiences that they had that helped them get here. And obviously, everybody has a little bit different, but let's say there's 10 characteristics that everybody in ABC, head, director, whatever has. Most of the time, I guarantee you'll probably see 6 out of 10 are the same. There's a few outliers, people who just had an amazing personal brand, like, oh, I know they can trust, I could trust that they could do this. But most of the time, if there's 10, there's probably 6 things that almost everybody has on that list, if not more. And I want you to, when you're looking at those unsavory tasks, I want you to ask yourself, will this unsavory task fulfill one of these buckets? I don't want you just doing this work that is drudgery, that you hate, that nobody else wanted. I want you to think about what is helping you become more visible. So what is the exposure level of doing this? A lot of those unsavory projects have a lot of visibility in the organization.
Yes.
And nobody wants to do them. They could be afraid of the visibility, or it could just be sucky work and you're just like, this is terrible. But when you're looking to make your next best move, you need more visibility. You need to be seen as someone who's executing, innovating, and willing to take some of those things. Because the reality is, being a leader, yes, you have some great work, some great projects. You want it to be aligned with your passions, your skills, your interests. But there's also some crap that we all hate and we never want to do again, but we got to do it. So it really helps, though, if you know why you're doing it. I'm not saying do it all the time. That's not what we're doing. We are doing strategic, unsavory work that is connected to your vision, that gives you experience, gives you visibility, and aligns to that move so you can use that work later. And I'm also saying do it for a period. I'm not saying that like you're signing up for this 5-year extra project with no pay.
Right.
I'm talking like, is it 6 to 12 months? And you're giving them essentially a preview of what you could do if hired in one of these higher level roles.
I love that. Like you said, you're not overcommitting yourself or your time to this role. Like you said, you're not going to give up 5 years for the unsavory work, right? And also taking the time to make sure that if I'm going to take on this work that's sucky, is it aligned with where I want to go, with the vision I have for my career, with the brand and what I want to be known for. So I love that. We do have a question I wanted to highlight here. And so Javier, I hope I'm not butchering your name. Please forgive me. But for someone looking to pivot professionally, but will require furthering their education, how do you balance that while still working towards obtaining the next title up the ladder in your current job? Ooh, that's a good one for you.
Oh, it is. It is. It's a good question. So a few things. I have a podcast where I ask people, is it your hustle season or rest season? I think that we can do all the things, but we need to realize what is the priority in that season. For some folks, we can do, like, you have to, your capacity. That's what I'll say. Your capacity. A lot of times when someone is going for additional education, I know for me, I am not a fan of school. And I have a master's degree, but I cried almost every day by the end. I will tell you that right now. I worked full time doing my master's and had a required internship and was taking a full course load. I was miserable. Going to school takes a lot of time, like physical time and mental capacity. So I would always try and figure out what is reasonable so that you're not burning the candle at both ends. What's your order of operations? Is the priority moving up because you need to make more money, more salary, more impact, whatever it is there? Or is the priority to like get this degree done faster? Because for someone who wants to, let's say, accelerate their degree, I knew for me, I'm not a school person. I did my master's and my bachelor's faster than the program allotted for. So my undergrad, I did it in 3 years instead of 4. My graduate degree should have taken 3 to 4 years. I did it in 2 because I don't like school. So during that time period, I kept a job that I still worked hard and had lots of things, but I wasn't really pushing because a lot of my capacity was for school. So I would ask this person to really evaluate what is going to best serve them in this season and what is their priority. Is it the schooling to get this done faster? So maybe we need to like meet expectations at work. Or is the priority to make more money? So maybe we may do school a little bit slower And when they position for this new role, I think also right now, it always kills me when employers kind of push for education when it may not necessarily be necessary. So for this person who is working on their education, I want you to also really get good at your storytelling. Really get clear on who you are, what you bring, the experiences that you've had. So if roles do come about, because I'm not someone who says, wait, just because you're doing something else. If there's an opportunity that comes, I want you to be ready. Really drive home your storytelling from your direct experiences, which sometimes I say are even better than like traditional education. I've worked in Ivy League institutions, and one of the things we say is that a lot of times students who are at non-Ivy Leagues beat out some Ivy League students in the job process because Ivy League students have such a huge push on curriculum, huge push on learning, sometimes are not even allowed to do internships during the school year because you should be focusing on your studies. But students at non-Ivy schools, they do internships year round.
Mm-hmm.
So they come out, and when they apply for jobs, they are so much more ready because they've done it year round versus Ivy students have just done it during the summers.
I love
But the difference sometimes is the storytelling and the prep. So for this individual, I'd say really work on that storytelling. So if an opportunity does arise and you can do both, then go for it. I know I feel like I gave like multiple answers there for that individual, but I think it's really personal and understanding what your capacity is. I'm a big believer in, I like people to have a life.
Yes. Yes.
Have a life and think about when we do that deep thinking, like we told Marcus in the beginning. That's why I said from the moment you open your eyes to the moment you pull the covers back up at night, because I want you to think about what that life looks like and what will make you happy. Even we spend 40 plus hours a week at work. So I do believe we need some semblance of joy there because we literally can't make up 40 plus hours at work. It's impossible. If your job sucks, I promise you probably think your life sucks because Saturday and Sunday is not enough to make it up. So I want you to think about in totality, what are all the things you have? Is there a relationship? Are there children? Are there parents? Do you have, you want to do a pickup basketball game on the weekends? Like, what are the things that are important to you? And what does this whole life vision look like? So you're building not just a career, not just getting your education, but you have a life that brings you joy.
I love that so much. Thinking bigger than just what am I doing every day at work? It's like, what do I want my life to look like? Because that helps you with the prioritization that you mentioned.
Yes.
Is it the job? Is it the education? It's like when you think about your life priorities, what's most important to you? Because then that'll help to guide the steps that you take from here. So I love that perspective. So hopefully, Javier, hopefully that provides some insight for you. So I know that we're coming up on time here.
Already.
Yeah, I know. This has been just wonderful. This has been such a great conversation. Hopefully, all the listeners and viewers have been able to get some good perspective. So, one of the last questions, that I want to ask, and we've touched on this, but I think it's really the culmination is, for both Marcus and for someone who's mid-career, not at the end, like what does it look like overall to intentionally build that legacy, for those who may have, who are thinking about where they are today in their mid-career, what does it look like to intentionally build that legacy for the future?
The number one thing I'd say that someone needs to do is have their own career strategy. They need to have a strategy. And I saw someone in the comments said, like, the best strategy is to have employers go after you. And I literally say that on the back of my book. I say, create a career that creates opportunities for you. And in order to have those opportunities created, you need to have a strategy that is for you, by you, for whatever your goals are, and get really clear. So when I kind of break down strategy to my clients, I joke and I say, if I'm your fairy job mother and I can give you whatever job you want and snap my fingers and say, where would you be in 10 years? I want you to think about what that vision looks like. Now, we know that vision is a moving target. Things may shift. I know for me, I told you earlier, I wanted to be that director of career services. I was interviewing for a lot of those jobs and I was top two and I was not number one like Beyonce. Okay. I was coming up top two and we all know what that feels like. It feels terrible. I was sad, depressed, the whole nine, just like anybody who's gone through that over time. And that led me to completely changing my strategy. And I ended up someplace else. So I would say leave room for magic, but we need to anchor the strategy in something. It doesn't mean that you can't do anything else, but we need to have some strategy. So if we know where we want to be in 10 years, I ask you, where do you need to be in 5 to be there in 10? And then where do we need to be in 2 to be there in 5 to be there in 10? And then we start working on that 2-year chunk because I think a lot can happen in 2 years. And I teach my clients to break it down in 6-month increments of what are you going to work on? What is the main gap because there's always a gap between where you are and where you'd like to be. What is the gap that you're going to focus on for that 6-month period? What are the milestones you need to achieve? So what does it look like when you've reached this? And who are the people who are going to help you and support you? And I think as someone in the career space, I'm not sure if you'd agree, Julia, but I feel like people don't treat their careers with intention.
Oh, that's a
They
word there.
they don't treat their careers with intention. I think, like, I call myself a geriatric millennial. I have baby boomer parents. And I think when you have boomer parents, there was this methodology of you put your head down and you just work. And when the time is right, it don't matter if you've been there 20 years and you waited for that promotion. You just put your head down and you wait to get that promotion. It'll be okay. And then you retire after 50 years and get a gold watch and a pat on the back.
Right. And the cake. Don't forget the cake and
Yeah.
the party, right? The cake
And
and
it's
the
not
party.
even the good Costco cake. It's something else that's terrible and dry after you've been there all that time. Like, so I teach people that, like, that's not the way the world of work is, even though, especially for those of us, I think a lot of Gen Xers, a lot of millennials, we're starting to feel this, like, we need more. We're not just willing to sit there. And the strategy is what we really need to be intentional about, because we treat our careers just hoping something happens. We do work with our head down. We don't have a strategy that is really for us, by us, that teaches us how to navigate. And if you are confused on the type of strategy that you need, or even how to build one, there are so many resources. There are books, there are coaches, there are YouTube videos, there are so many things you can read to help you build that, because not every company also has proper career pathing or resources available. That's why I say it has to be from you. I honestly don't care what your company does. If your company does it, that's great. But again, your company is doing it for their benefit. It's generally not for your benefit. It's for their benefit to retain you and teach you exactly what you need to do to stay there. We want you to have a strategy at your company, but also one independent, because the world is crazy. We don't know what's going to happen.
Man, I love that idea so much of having your own strategy, right? Don't wait for someone else to craft your career story or your career vision or your career outcomes. It's up to you to decide what I want and what success looks like to me. And then you build the plan. And I love the idea of working backwards, right? Like you say, okay, 10 years from now, I want to be here. So what steps do I need to take in the interim to make sure that I'm able to be there in 10 years? So just that was just really good. So I hope you guys were taking some notes. And so let's go ahead and wrap up the conversation. We've covered a lot. Hopefully, Marcus, if there's a Marcus who's out here listening, he's gotten a lot of insights tonight. But any final words for the viewers as we wrap up? Any final words of advice or insight when it comes to building your leadership brand and legacy?
So, speaking to the individuals, I think the number one thing I always say is that I know the strategy takes time. I know that it's not sexy work. It doesn't feel good, but we need to stop hoping that our careers just happen by accident. If you wanted to run a marathon tomorrow and you are not a runner and have not been training for 9 months, you'll be like me and barely make it past a mile. Like, I would have to walk that 26.5 miles because I am not a runner. And I tell folks all the time, in the workplace, we show up with no practice. We show up with no marathon training, hoping that we're going to get the job, we are going to get promoted, that we'll be able to build the team, but we don't have mentors, we don't have sponsors, we don't have strategy. We just have, like, an idea. We're just on fumes and hopes and dreams, hoping that someone else will see us and see that you're doing such great work and that you're able to do that. And I always encourage folks, like, let's stop building careers on hope and building careers having all these secret dreams that have never been articulated. Let's build a strategy. Let's build the relationships that we need to support the strategy. And then let's magnify that strategy through our relationships, through high visibility projects, even if they're unsavory. So we're truly positioning ourselves for our next best new move and not just hoping and wishing something will happen. I know it's not sexy, but this is how it's done. And when we look at leaders in a lot of corporations, they've been groomed for years.
Yeah.
But we don't see all that behind the scenes work. A lot of CEOs in companies, when you look at the person who becomes the new CEO, they've been at the company for a long time. And if they were external, they had been talking and in talks sometimes for years, getting training and mentoring and positioning. And that's why sometimes when you apply, you don't get it, because there's already been someone in the wing. If
Yeah.
you want to be the person in the wing, you have to have some strategy.
I love that. So for the folks who are listening, you need an actual strategy because hope is not one. You actually need to take the time to focus, to get the resources and to plan.
Mhm.
To your point, if you want to lose weight, you know that you have to go get a trainer, you have to eat right, you
Yeah.
have to build an eating plan and a workout plan. So there's a lot that goes into other areas of our lives that we're okay with planning, but for some reason with our careers, we're just kind of, throwing things at the wall and hoping for the
Hope and
best.
sticks. Yep. They'll see me one day.
And it's like, that's not how it works. So, Kimberly Brown, thank you so much for sharing so much insight and perspective and just knowledge this evening. For the folks who are listening, if they want to get in touch with you, whether it's for, individual coaching or for their organization, how can they go about doing that?
Absolutely. So everything personal, if you're looking for yourself, I put a lot of content out. Brownleadership.com has everything about the company, our coaching, our programs, our services. If you're looking to kiki and talk online, I'm Kimberly B online on all platforms. And I'm known to answer questions in the DM. So if you have a question, please feel free to DM me or even send me a voice note on LinkedIn. I'd love to connect with you.
And so just hint, hint, right? If you don't want your boss or whoever it is to see what you're saying online, so put it in the DMs for Kimberly so she can answer the question for you directly. But thank you again, Kimberly, for being here. Such good insights and perspectives. You know how to get in touch with her and her organization to support you if you need it. I'm Julia Rock. Thank you for watching this week's episode of The Career Climb. We'll be back next week, same time, same place, and looking forward to seeing you there. Good night, everyone. Thank you for your time.